What's up, my brothers and sisters? Welcome to the Fireground Fitness Podcast, where we talk about all things pertaining to life on and off the fireground. The views and opinions are those of the host and our guest. Today, we have the pleasure of talking to Ardell Deliz. She is a 20-year vet with the Phoenix Fire Department and a all-around amazing person. She does mentoring, climbing, cycling. She is just a tremendous person and a wonderful guest. So, enjoy. So, Ardell, my friend, I am super excited to sit down and chat with you and throw the headphones on and have a real conversation. I've known you now for over 20 years, I guess.
Just about.
Yeah, and which is always an amazing thing to timestamp. It blows my mind.
Oh, yeah.
Because how much time has passed over the course of our careers and over the course of our lives.
Well, 20 years ago, I was 26, and I was just trying to see what this fire department gig was going to be all about. And when I met you, you were like, hey, it's going to be all right. This is awesome, and you had already been doing it, and you were coming on to Phoenix, and so was I. And that's where this whole thing has started. It's pretty awesome.
So you took a little bit of an unusual journey here. So you started with the alarm room for a little bit, and then came over to the fire department. How did you know that you were going to go into fire operations?
So that's what I wanted, and I started testing right around 2001, I believe, 2000, and met some women when I moved out here from Florida that were all into fire. Got hooked up with Donna Feller's group, and that was eye-opening. And right around that time, we had Brett Tarver's tragedy, and which made probably a lot of us question, what are we doing? Is this the right career for me? How do I explain to my family I'm about to enter into a career where we just lost a guy, and not just a little guy, a big guy, smart, well known for his abilities, and, we couldn't save him out of a building.
His tragedy really demonstrated how vulnerable and fragile we all are, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And I would say that in many ways that kind of summarizes my career with the fire department. It's kind of like, it always amazes me how in the biggest traumatic scenes, our lives can be it's such a fine line, who makes it and who doesn't. How the frailty of life and in incidents that sometimes don't seem that serious and somebody's gone, and in complete disastrous events where there's no way anybody could be alive and you have somebody totally unscathed, and it's a fine line. And so coming onto the job and learning all these skills, and then that being the tragedy of the fire department as I'm starting to get into what this fire department job is all about. So the an alarm room opening came up, or openings that were doing a hiring, and I figured, you know what? As I'm doing this and I'm preparing to become a firefighter, it would be great to get some other kind of experience inside the fire department and learn what the fire department is all about. How does it truly function? Because I look at fire department now, and we're like a huge high school, right? That we don't see each other in the halls anymore. We're all like in the same classroom. And unless people come into our classroom, we really don't get to see them very often, right? Where in high school, you exit the room and you go into the hallway and you see everybody, everybody, and you're like, hey, and you go to your next classroom and you have the interaction there. But I feel like as a rover, that was my life, right? As a rover, I was in the hallways all the time. I was saying hi to everybody, going to a classroom here, classroom there, all these different stations. And now in this later part of my career, I'm in one classroom, right? I have a overtime rescue, and they come to me, and I pretty much run my business out of Fire Station 45 with a great crew, and with my overtime guys that come in to work on that rescue.
Right.
So life has changed so much from 20 years ago, trying to figure out what this fire department was all about, how I was going to be introduced, how I was being introduced to it, and how I was going to be taken, right, at 5'5.5" with
let's talk about your
140
giant
pounds.
status that you
Right.
Well, okay, so hold on. Clearly, we need to talk about, we've skipped over, right, where you came from, though, because your accent gives it away just a little bit. So, so what's it like growing up in Puerto Rico?
Puerto Rico was awesome, and I can't say exactly what it's like now, right? But in the 1970s, it was wonderful. I lived on the street with practically with my grandmother and my mom, where she met my dad. So, and my grandmother lived about half a mile down the street, and it was a street that we walked up and down, rode our bikes up and down all the time, and we knew everybody in the neighborhood. Everybody knew who we were. My grandmother would always say, "You can't get in trouble because there's only one Ardell." And if I ever hear that Ardell got in trouble, I know it's you, And so we had this wonderful time with a bunch of neighbors, riding bikes, always on that same street. And then shortly after my parents' divorce, just like a lot of parents, go through their struggles, my mom decided, you know what, when Ardell turns 13 and she goes into high school, let's move to Florida. Seems like there's a lot of opportunity in Florida. And her biggest concern was we were paying for Catholic private school, very expensive, for 3 kids, and she felt her salary would go a lot farther if she came to Florida and we went to public school, right? So I turned 13, 8th grade, came and went, had my graduation, had my confirmation, Catholic confirmation, and we moved to Florida. And I remember thinking...
What part of Florida?
Orlando.
Okay.
And I remember thinking, man, so flat, there's like nothing. And we were used to the ocean.
You're talking about there's like freeway overpasses.
Yeah, that's about it, right? That's your highest point over there. And so in Puerto Rico, if you look one way, we could see the ocean. If you look the other way, you could see the mountains. And
Can we just stop for a second and talk about how awesome that sounds?
Yeah.
It just sounds so beautiful. I've never been, and it's on my list of places to go.
Right.
So
and
we'll have to talk about that later.
Yeah, and there's like a mile-long zip line now that you can take over the jungle. It's amazing.
Okay, so just for the sake of discussion briefly, what is if I go to Puerto Rico, where's the 3 best places I need to go? Top 3 things I got to do.
You got to go to Old San Juan because of culture.
Okay.
You got to go to El Yunque, which is the national rainforest, just to get your nature fix. And you definitely have to go to the biofluorescent bay out in Fajardo, because you do it at night. You're on kayaks, and every time you put that paddle into the water lights up.
Oh, that's cool.
The organism on the lagoon is just fantabulous.
All right.
So growing up in Puerto Rico was like constant discovery and nature, and it's a large, San Juan is a very large metropolitan city. So we had the hustle and bustle of a big city, but we also had the ability of, there's music everywhere, there's food everywhere, there's, it's just beautiful. It's just wherever you go, your family, everybody is, everybody almost, even if you don't, you're Puerto Rican, everybody's Puerto Rican. Doesn't matter what you look like, you're Puerto Rican, black, white, you're Puerto Rican. Yeah. So it's something that unites us.
Is there a strong cultural bond?
Oh, yeah.
Community, kind of a national bond, yeah.
For sure. I had never seen, when I came to the U.S., I never saw anybody like wearing flags, or in Puerto Rico, that was huge. Oh. People wear hats with a flag and, shirts with a flag. And I think right around that time, it was probably a little taboo here in the States to wear the flag as an item of clothing, and not just be the flag. So when I came to the U.S., it was kind of like, interesting. In Puerto Rico, we're wearing the flag. We're very proud that this is our flag, and it's the same flag as the Cuban flag, except for the colors are transposed. So the red and the blue are in different spots. So, to see the Cuban flag and the Puerto Rican flag, and you're like, right away, you're like, hey, you're Cuban, hey, I'm Puerto Rican. So there was a constant, connection, even with other people, because you're Puerto Rican. And if you go to Florida, you see there's a lot of more flags identifying where you're from, because in a way, that diversity is what unites us, right? So moving along with my high school experience.
So you end up in Orlando.
Mm-hmm. And I need to learn English fast. I gotta get it on. So I thought I knew English, right? We watched cable TV. We had we had English classes, growing up. English was all of our textbooks were in English except for our Spanish and social studies textbooks. So I had a good understanding of what the language was written, but not spoken. And now I need to speak it, which didn't think it was a big deal.
Well, and going into a classroom, it's got to be really hard. I mean, not only the social aspect of navigating just the world, but getting into a classroom and keeping up with the academics that's being thrown at you in English, probably at a speed that's makes the comprehension difficult, not to mention the just being able to keep up with the academics.
Well, it was interesting because didn't have an issue with understanding. It was just me delivering my message out.
Okay.
That's where I struggled a little bit. And that's where I really learned I have to laugh with them, because I can't take this personally and I can't cry, or they'll continue to pick on me even more, right? So going into high school, I was like, okay, they're laughing at me. What did I say? And then I just started asking, what did I say? And then they would tell me, and then I would start laughing with them. And I learned a lot about letting go of, this pride that I had on who I was and this perfection that I thought I had completely let go by the time I was 25, 26, by the time I got on the job. And then I started playing golf about 3 years ago, and all this perfectionist stuff came back in. I'm like, this game. So it's a love-hate relationship. But, we go in these circles, right, where we find ourselves again. It's like, I got to work on this one thing where I thought I could excel at anything. And this one thing is showing me that I have to have a little bit of grace with myself, just like I did when I was learning a language, right? And just like I did when I got on this job, and I wasn't, like one of my first booter captain was Tom Underwood, and he's like, Ardell, you're definitely not the fastest. You're definitely not the strongest. You're definitely not the tallest, but you have the best attitude. And if you keep this attitude your entire career, you're going to do fine. And that was my introduction to the fire department. So going back to high school, I learned a lot about keeping my cool, doing well under pressure, taking a breath before I spoke, because I knew at some point I was going to make a mistake, and that's okay. I had to face that. And to learn, just to learn.
Can I just say it's so amazing to me, because I remember being in elementary school and being so afraid to be called up to the board, because for example, math problems for me, I'm not a speedy mathematician, and I was so freaked out that I would the classic, I would avert eye contact. I would,
right.
I would make myself as tiny as I could, because I did not want to be called on. Because I was so afraid. And I carried that with me for a long time. Just this sense of insecurity, this sense of, I told myself, hey, I'm a horrible student. And it wasn't until I kind of got out of high school that I began to find some sense of self. And it's interesting, because it's such a tough time when you're young, trying to figure that out. So I'm really excited to hear you say, I'm really proud of you for leaning into that difficult, uncomfortable situation, because how well has that served you since, right?
Yeah. And I mean, and those uncomfortable situations happen often throughout my life, right?
Right. To all of us.
And, from I mean, there's so many things we don't talk about. We don't talk about, and growing up Catholic, we didn't talk about a lot of things either, you know? So then you're finding out things through your friends and sometimes in very embarrassing situations for yourself, right? But it's hard to be a kid. It's hard to be a kid. And it's probably even harder today, you know, with cameras on you, on everything that you're doing. So you can't even overcome a moment without it probably had been recorded in some way.
Yeah.
You know, just like we have, you know, like right now.
Yeah,
I probably have this anxiety right now, you know.
Do not mess up right now.
I am getting recorded.
I will not edit it.
So everybody that's in this situation, you know exactly how that feeling is of, I have to do well and I have to do perfect. And you don't. You have to be you. And it's so hard to be you. But if you think about not being you, how would I not be me? Then it's easy to be me. Because there's no way I can be anybody else. I can't even try.
Yeah.
Can't even think about even acting it out. Because I'm horrible at it. So, but it's like for me, is high school was tough, but I learned a lot. It was probably the point of my life, and I think probably for most kids where you go, and it was the first time in my life I didn't have my younger brothers in the school with me as well. So we were all in different schools.
Are you the oldest?
Yeah. So from K through 12, we had K through 12 schools in Puerto Rico. And now my youngest brother is in elementary school, middle one is in middle school, and I'm walking into high school. So that ability to escape a situation to make sure that my brothers were okay,
right, that's
no longer available to me. You know, now it's just me. So you learn a lot, and you learn a lot about taking care of yourself. So
yeah, there's so much in that high school experience that shapes who we are. So you know, you talked about pretty early on figuring out you wanted to go into the fire service, but what, you know, as you were exiting high school, what was on your mind?
It's funny. It's kind of like what it's on my mind now. I didn't have a plan. I really didn't. I knew I needed to go to college, and I knew that I needed to learn more, which is pretty much where I'm at now. I need to learn. I need to see what's out there. But my plan was to play volleyball and be so good that it would pay for 4 years of college, and then I would have a career, and then I would go to work like everybody else does. Well, that didn't really work out, right? Again, I'm 5'6", you know, everybody around me. In Puerto Rico, yeah, I was playing well. I was taller than most people. But now, not so much, right? So I got into high school, everybody's towering over me. But I have a sport. I know how to play volleyball. Most kids, you know, were just learning to play. And I had been playing since I was in 4th grade. So I had an in that way for language, for friends, for, you know, such an important thing when you're going into a new situation. And
it's a good way to build some social collateral,
for
too.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, if I can beat you up with a volleyball, you don't want to mess with me.
Well, plus you come in and now you automatically have teammates that value you.
Exactly.
Right? So you're a valued part of the team, and they'll be your advocates.
And they are. And they were, you know, my team was fantastic. So had a great time. But then, yeah, coming out of high school, I played 2 years of college volleyball. And I really fought to try to get Division I, but I couldn't. At that time, there was no, you know, back row specialist, libero, or anything like that. So the game has changed a lot, and I'm actually not part of the game anymore because of that. You know, it's pretty much like all of us. So after a couple of years of college, I went into the struggle, right? The real struggle of I have no money, but I want to go to college. I need a job. Now I need a second job to be able to go to college, but now I'm falling asleep during classes in school. Well, I have to make a decision. Is it worth going to school for a degree that I'm not learning anything in, just for a piece of paper, or do I just go to work? I made the decision to go to work, started doing a bunch of retail, and enjoy the customer service part of working retail. I did a lot of unloading trucks and what they call planogramming, which you deal with a lot of items and you put them in shelves and you do this stuff. But when you dealt with people, it was really where I felt like I was shining. And moved to Florida. Moved to Arizona. And the reason why I moved was Toys R Us. I had a friend that lived out here. She's like, hey, come out here, check it out. Her friend was like, hey, we need a Spanish-speaking supervisor. Come out here, check it out. It was Y2K, right before 2000, and they didn't know what was going to happen. And then I came in, and I was like, all right, I'm going to work Toys R Us for a couple of years. And that's where I met firefighters. So one day, Chandler firefighters walked in, and one of them was looking for the figurines and what was new, and I was so tired, and I came up to one of them, and I was like, hey, are you guys getting paid right now?
So, here you guys are on duty toy shopping, right. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I was so tired. I don't think I would have ever asked that to anybody in my right mind, but I wasn't. I had been up all night stocking shelves and dealing with my crew, and these guys came in, and I hit them up, and they're like, yeah, they were great. They were like, yeah, you know what? If a call comes in, we hear it right here on the radio. They'll call us directly. We'll get on the truck and we'll go. And I was like, wow, I need a job like that. And I remember myself saying that, like, wow, I need a job. Like I was done with the four walls, and I just needed to be outside and meeting people. And so I went on a couple of ride-alongs, and I was like, I'm sold. This is awesome. So I started testing. And then I met a group of women that were training to do the same thing. Now, I lived right next to a firefighter in Orlando. It was never even mentioned, hey, you could be a firefighter if you wanted to. Never. But here I moved to Arizona, and it's like everywhere I go, it's like hitting me from all sides. Why don't you become a firefighter? And, then there's your own limiting beliefs that start, well, you're only 5'6", and you're a woman, and you have this accent, and people are going to make fun of you. And do you really want to put yourself through this kind of career? It's a male-dominated career. But then you start thinking, well, I've dealt with my brothers all of my life, right? I'm great with people.
I've been training for just this thing.
Exactly. Yeah. I love people. I love working with men. I just as much as I love working with women, I have no problem with who I am in either way, and I'm like, I'm not gonna let that scare me. I've unloaded trucks with men. I've done all kinds of jobs with men. I can do the job, and if I can do the job, then I want to do the job. So that's when meeting these women was something that I'm like, all right, these women are doing it. I should be able to do it too. And started.
Were these women that were part of, was it Rosies Ladders back in the days, or was this just a detached group of gals that was on the job?
No, it was actually before Rosies Ladders. I think Rosies Ladders came closer to 2007, 8. This was actually 2000s. Donna Feller, Martha Mixon, Carrie Lansbury. They all had, a day at the academy where they could bring women and kind of show them the skills. And Tina Rubio, Michael Tellis.
So this is just back before it was really kind of structured.
It was, yeah, exactly. It was kind of like, we need more women on the fire department type of thing, and we need women to show other women how to do this, you know. And it was very, it was wonderful. Like, people might have their own opinions of what that was like. I'm like, if you weren't there, you don't know how amazing it was to have a group of women with much better things to do than to work with a bunch of green tomatoes that are walking through there trying to figure this job out, right? And giving them as much of their knowledge as they could. And how the way has been paved. It wasn't easy for them. It wasn't easy for the women before them. It's probably never going to be easy or just as easy as somebody else, but nobody has it easy. I don't care if you're a man or a woman on this job. You have something to do, and you have something to prove, and you're gonna try to do those things. And it might be easier for some than for others, but everybody has a job to do, and you have to work hard at this job to get it and to do it right. So what I learned from being there is we need more mentorship. We need more women mentoring other women, because it's hard for men to mentor women. And it has nothing to do with a man being a man, except that he's got a wife at home that has to answer, why is this woman calling you right now, right?
That's probably one factor. I mean, there's all kinds of challenges, I think, there. One thing that I would point out, I think, is that when, a man's perspective is, here's how you do this. Here's how so for me, I'm 6'2", you're 5'6"?
5'5.5".
Okay, we'll call you 5'6" on a good day, right? Back in the day, I'll give you a perfect example. We used to do the test, the physical test, the physical abilities test to get on the job. There was a ladder on the wall, and you had to take it off a set of rungs, move it over, and hang it back up on another set of rungs or something like that. And for me, at 6'2", it was like right at the shoulder height. It's perfect, right? But for someone who's 5'6" on a good day with boots on, right? That's a whole different situation. So for me to try to coach you through that or mentor you through that, like that's just one kind of thing where my perspective is totally like physically a different perspective. And then over the years, I've watched smaller people do amazing things on this job because they found a different way to do it. It's a way that I could never have shown, right? I watched a small engineer climb over the back of a fire truck like a spider monkey and pulling ladders and doing all kinds of amazing stuff. I could stand on the ground and do all that when I was an engineer, right? Just different, the physical perspective that's totally different. Not to mention, so now you take that out and you talk about like the social perspectives, right? I can't speak to the perspective of what social anxiety would look like in a firehouse from a woman's perspective. I can't do it. I mean, I could imagine, but I'm really extrapolating out on other experiences. I don't really have that exposure. So for you to go in and to be mentored by other women who can say, listen, here's the real deal on this job. That's so important.
Right.
And, and to say, listen, you are going to have challenges. They're different challenges than Rain's going to face. Rain has his own set of challenges.
For sure.
Right. And so you have to be aware. I think to go into this job fully prepared, you have to have that honest conversation and go in eyes wide open so that you can adapt. It's not impossible, but you do need to know you are going to face some silly bullshit.
Right.
And how do you manage that, right?
And I think the management of that BS is, for a woman on this job, is how much do you want your guys to be themselves, and how much do you want to have them behave in a certain way only when you're around, because they're going to behave the way they are when they're around everybody else. So my way of walking into a fire station is, I know that I determine what that line will be in the sand as far as what is allowed and what isn't, and there's not much that needs to be said. Like, okay, really? Do we really want to go there? And that's already if we're really pushing it past the point where I'm feeling a little uncomfortable that the conversation is going a certain way. But half the time, our conversations are very real, right? Like somebody has a real, maybe a little bit colorful type of way of describing how there's something going on. It's like, all right, well, let's find a way of talking about it without being so colorful about it. Let's tone it down a little bit. Let's talk about what the real problem is. The beauty of the fire department is that we're not corporate America. Is that we depend on each other to do the right job for not just our customer, but for each other if we're in trouble. So to be able to manage the scene, you have to be able to know exactly how your guys are feeling and performing on a given day, but also how much do they trust you to have their backs no matter what happens. And we're family, right? I would not want the fire department to be anywhere any other way. So we have a lot of things that this world wants us to identify as discrimination or harassment, or, and there is a fine line between this banter that's constantly at the fire station and what somebody else might find offensive. But again, how do you want your guys to be to you, and how do you want to be to your guys? Can they trust you for being a true, real person that believes in them as their equals and your brothers and sisters? Or do you want to be that person that's always saying, hey, you can't talk that way, you can't do this, you can't do that? In my opinion, if that's the kind of person that you feel like you have to be, you have to go to corporate America. That's what corporate America wants and needs, but you cannot be at a fire station. A fire station, I need somebody to be a brother, a sister, a mom, a dad, sometimes even a grandpa, like, hey kid, pick it up. You're not moving. And we have a lot of young guys on the job with not a lot of mentorship, not a lot of people stopping them and saying, hey, what are you doing right now? And I feel like that's such an important part of when I grew up in this fire department. There were a lot of older people, and some people were amazing. You learned so much from them, from what to do, and they told you straight up, don't do that ever again, And now there's so much massaging around it. We don't want to say it too straight up that you can't do something or you should do it a certain way. It's like, no, you got to take care of your own business, and you're not taking care of your business if you're doing that here at the fire station.
There's a great expression that I learned. I think it's Brene Brown, actually. She says, clear is kind.
Yes.
So we have to learn to have hard conversations. Mm-hmm. And, I think we've gotten afraid to sometimes have real conversations because we're afraid of offending somebody or hurting someone's feelings or whatever. But in this work that we do, trust is critical, and you have to build trust. It doesn't happen automatically.
Right.
And to go back to your other point about the words that we use around the firehouse, the way we talk to one another, it's so important that when we talk about building trust, it's about knowing where somebody else is, having respect for somebody else, and not using language that would be offensive to someone else or saying things that's toxic to somebody else. And let's just, we'll kind of go into something like politics, for example. Like, hey, if I know you see things differently than me, and I'm purposely going to go in and I'm going to fan the flames, that's not cool, man. Right? If we're on opposite sides of an issue, then either we have a respectful, real conversation about it, or we don't go there. But if you can't honor my position, even though it's different than yours, how are we going to trust each other when shit gets real?
Right.
And there's all kinds of, when you talk about like, sexual issues or whatever with regard to like, sexual harassment or whatever, like, know your audience and build a relationship with somebody so that you can speak freely, right? Or when you shouldn't. Not because you're curtailing it, but because not because you're curtailing it just because this other person, but because you respect that person. And I'm not gonna come in and if somebody has a religious perspective that's different than mine, and I find out, I'm not gonna come in and bash their religion in front of them. Like, that's just not cool, man. Now I expect you to have my back when we're in the middle of a firefight. So I'm not gonna harass you, or I'm not gonna, that's not cool.
Right.
So it's, on one hand, we have to remember that this is a job, it's a career, and we work for an organization, that's bigger than any of us, and we have to be respectful of that. But also we have some latitude because it's not corporate America. So, but at the same time, so we have to be careful because we could find ourselves in lockdown here pretty quick if we're not treating each other with love and respect and kindness.
For sure.
So we have to be careful if we find ourselves in lawsuits all the time because we're not being mindful of that.
Right. And you said it perfectly right. It's that respect for each other and where each of us come from. You know, when we look at each other as equals, we're, once again, brothers and sisters. Doesn't matter where we come from. And, you know, I heard it great from a friend of mine. She's like, I'm superior to you because of my experiences that I've had that you haven't had. But you're superior to me because of the experiences that you've had that I haven't had. Therefore, we're equals because we can learn from each other's experiences without having to go through them ourselves, right? And the more I respect and value you, the more I will learn about these experiences and hopefully not have to go through them myself to learn the lesson in each and every one of them. But this job offers us so many great opportunities to meet people, especially right now with COVID, where everybody's been so cooped up and there's so much anxiety in the world. And if they got COVID, they're worried that they have it. And if they haven't had it, they're worried they will get it. And they haven't even had a conversation with anybody outside of their family in over 2 years, right? So we go into their homes, and when we take, 5 minutes to sit down and talk to them, you realize, they're people. They're like true breathing people with like these real worries, and we get to see so much of them if we just sit down and share with them just a little bit what we got, and we can make their day a little better. Just a little better, just enough hope for them to keep going for the next day and then the next day. But we have these amazing jobs in which we're invited into strangers' homes to help them out. And we should take full advantage of that. Like, let's go in there. Let's not be angry. Let's have a great time because, let's face it, unless it's serious and unless it's an emergency in which we're working, which we're always happy to do, all these other calls, when we're getting called, it's usually they just need to sit down and talk. There's something going on. They just need to talk it out. It's not very hard. We have a great job, Yeah, we have to, it's hard to remember sometimes when you get frustrated, that it's just human beings trying to find their way, right? And this, not to get too deep too fast, but we're all hurtling through the universe on a rock together. Right. That's all we have is each other. At this point in time,
and,
here we are.
And I don't know, whatever anybody's, I can't say the word, specific belief is about the universe at large and God and the, heaven and earth and blah, 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 whatever that is, the one thing for certain is we are all together on this planet in the here and now, traveling through the universe, right? However many millions of miles per hour we're traveling. That's a big deal. Right. And when you think about it that way, you go, I can run that next call and be nice. Like, that's easy to do.
Why not?
Right? Yeah.
But we really don't have anything to lose. We're getting paid 24 hours. We're there. We're already there, you know? But, we are definitely working a lot. We are, our crews are working a ton, and because we have this high level of anxiety in the world, we have to be really good to ourselves because nobody else is going to be good to us. We are the
What does that
heroes,
look like?
Right?
What does that look like to you?
Oh, you know what? I've had for a little while. I've had this. I've had this feeling of. I started climbing again. Climbing has been like the most focusing thing that I can do, where it clears my mind from anything else. And so you start climbing again, you start to feel these calluses come on your hands again that, you have calluses. We all have calluses in our hands from our jobs, but you get these new ones, these tougher ones from climbing. And, lately it's been feeling like all along through our careers, we've been told, don't get calloused. Don't get calloused. Well, calluses are good. Calluses protect our hands, and calluses protect, in my opinion, our heart and our brain. Like we all know what it's like to lose that first love, and you do form a callus, but you got to take care of that callus, right? You can't let it rip open again. You got to massage it. You got to, give it some loving, tender care. And I think that's where we fail as an organization to take care of our guys, is to massage those calluses. Like, keep taking care of yourself, finding that mental health, more tools to take care of yourself on your own. And don't get me wrong, we have great resources, but when you're going on 5, 6, 7 calls after midnight, and they're all anxiety calls, and now we're going back to the station with our own anxiety because we haven't slept, we haven't, been able to get the rest out that we're supposed to get and recover from a full day's work, and now we're gonna either do it again the very next day or do it again 2 days later, or you have a family to take care of, and they need you to be present, but you just can't be. We need to figure out how to take care of ourselves. And so, my little mantra now is like taking care of the calluses, like we were talking about earlier, sleeping. Today I slept a day away. I have an opportunity to do that. Somebody else might not.
Yeah.
But what I've done through the last 20, 30 years, because I've been working nights pretty much all my life, is the moment I get off work, I start to eat to stay awake, and I'm chewing, but not realizing the moment I'm not eating, I'm already in this position where I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to fall asleep. I need to get something else in my mouth to stay awake. And thankfully, I'm not overweight, like I don't know how I'm not, but... And then today, I was like, I am so tired. I'm not even going to even try to stay awake. I'm just going to sleep. And I'm probably in a better place now than if I would have tried to stay awake and, fight it until I go to sleep. So to me, that was, taking care of that callus, like really taking care of my heart, taking care of my mind, my attitude, my emotions. And now I'm in this great place, here talking with you, where I'm comfortable, I don't feel anxious. I'm not worried about my next shift. I slept. But somebody with a family that today they had to, babysit their kids, how do you take care of yourself? How do you keep it low key without taking away from your family? And that's where I feel like we need more resources to learn to do those things, to convince ourselves. And I mean, we're in a crisis, right? We don't have enough people to work. So we can't tell them, hey, don't come to work. We want you to work. But at the same time, don't come to work if you can't work. Don't show up to work if you're exhausted, if you're tired, if you need sleep. Go home, go to sleep, or stay at the station, go to sleep.
Yeah, I remember early in my career running, busy shifts, and we get that call at like 4:30 in the morning, get back to the station, you're like, what's the point of going back to bed at this point? And I remember a captain telling me, always re-rack. Even if it's for 30 more minutes, like you can always re-rack. And I was like, ugh. And then I got into with young kids at home, going into a cycle where I'd come off shift, and I would want to spend time with my kids. And my wife would always be like, go take a nap. And I'm like, I can't. Like, I would struggle to go lay down for whatever reason. I physically would wake up and feel gross afterwards, and sleep for a couple hours, whatever. So I'm like, I'm just going to stay awake until it's time to go to bed. And so then I would just be a jerk all day because I was grumpy and miserable and tired. And so it is really unhealthy, and really it does have, it's a precursor, a developmental precursor for cancer and all, mental health issues and PTSD, and it's not healthy. So we have to be very careful with that, and you got to take naps, you got to get sleep, you got to, get a healthy sleep routine.
Yeah.
Not easy. It's hard.
It is.
But it is critical. And I think as an organization, here in our neck of the woods or any jurisdiction, you really got to think about, how do you get your staffing levels up to a point so that you can get ahead of that, right?
Right.
It's difficult. It's difficult to do.
Yeah, I think, right now we have an opportunity as a fire service to try to figure out some of these things, and I hope we do. I mean, it's a real problem. It's a real challenge, and we need guys to be healthy. We need our workers to be in the best shape that they can be.
Well, our most expensive and important asset is our people.
Of course.
Period. And so we do have to figure out how to make this a healthy environment if possible. And it's challenging.
Yeah, and there are no answers, right? Well,
here's the good thing that I would say. I could be wrong about this, but the good thing is the conversation is being had. Mm-hmm. We're asking the hard questions. People are doing research. We're pointing to the problems and identifying them. Now we have to start identifying solutions and applying capital to those solutions to fix them, which that's where it gets really, really demanding and hard. We're certainly not going to solve that problem right here, right now, but it's good to start having the dialogue and you go, okay, well, all things in life, right? You go, what is the thing that I can control? I can go home and take a nap, right? I can eat healthy. I can get as good a sleep routine as possible so that my sleep hygiene is good. I can go climbing. I can go get some exercise. Those are things that are well within my control. Some of the things are out of our control, and all we do is we turn to our organization, we turn to our bosses, and we go, hey, can we do this differently? What can we do differently in our organization to help ourselves out? And then we work toward those solutions. But we have to take the bull by the horns with the stuff that we can control today. Because if you wait for someone else to do it, it's going to be too late. Right.
But the thing, like we were talking about earlier, is we think we can do it all because we've been doing it all, right, since in our 20s. And now, all of a sudden, we were talking about this, how here I am, 46. How come I just figured this out today? Why have I been fighting sleep? Well, I've been fighting sleep because I've done it all my life. And guess what? I've been successful. At least I think I have been. Right? That relatively successful at managing my next day and my next whatever situation. Well, it finally catches up to you, but how hard does it catch up to you? Well, it catches up to us in many ways, right? That we destroy our relationships. We get hurt, or we get diseases that we can't overcome, or they take a long time to overcome. Or we start experiencing some mental trauma and PTSD, which becomes a struggle to maintain under control. So it's because since our 20s, we've been doing it. We've been burning that candle at both ends, and we've been relatively successful at kicking ass, right? But we don't have a true marker of what that kicking ass really is, right? We just know that we've been doing pretty darn good all along. Well, if we continue to redline every workout, eventually we just get hurt. Well, this is what we're doing. We're redlining every day in our lack of sleep and our lack of attention to those calluses, and then we go ripping them without knowing, and they hurt when you rip them, and here we are trying to figure out how do we overcome, but we know the answer. Let's try to get some more sleep. Let's try to be better to ourselves. It's just that our culture doesn't, we are the ones that help other people. We're not the ones that need help. So we never ask for help, right? That's our biggest thing. And then by the time you realize, what am I doing with myself? Why am I still trying to eat my way out of, going to sleep?
Right.
Just go to sleep, just get some rest, and you'll feel a little better. But I mean, look at me. 7 o'clock at night, 6:30, 7:30. Here I am drinking a cup of coffee. Horrible habits, why are
But
we
so
doing this to
delicious.
ourselves, right? But this is just to stay awake. This is what
Right.
I felt like I needed today after
Yeah.
day or night of getting crushed yesterday.
Right.
So,
Right.
and it sounds like whining, right? But we're all in this same boat. But it's almost like we're all trying to swim to shore, the boat's sinking, and we're like, we need help. But
Well, you said it. You said it earlier. You're like, hey, I finally reached an age where I'm recognizing, and I hate to be the old man in the room, but so many times I remember as a young cat, people being like, you'll understand when you get older.
right.
Hey, man, I'm telling you, listen to, if you are, if you're hearing this and you are still a young person, heed our words. This is old people advice. Like, you've got to lean in on these things that we're talking about and make better decisions. Because we've faced the consequences of these. But I think, though, the narrative, that the conversation we're having today is not the conversation that was being had 20 years ago.
No.
Right? So it was just different. When I first came on the job, I also worked as a handyman on my days off. I had a small business. And why? Because that's what I needed to do. I needed to hustle. I needed to make extra money. And, because I was not making enough to make ends meet. So that's what you do. And, a lot of folks came on the job doing that. And that's the way we did it. And now run the call volume we run now, I couldn't do that. Like, I couldn't have done it. I'd have been a horrible handyman. Right. So okay. Sleep deprivation aside, what is something that, as a company officer or throughout your career or whatever, what is something that's a non-negotiable for you?
Non-negotiable. Not being inclusive at my fire station.
What does that look like to you?
Everybody has to be part of the conversation. Nobody is excluded. Everybody's given a chance at the table to speak their opinion. It doesn't matter what that opinion is. So we're not gonna pick on one person. We're all gonna get picked on. That includes myself. Like to me, the bond that happens at the fire station is unique. It doesn't really happen anywhere else, and it's because of the training that we do together, the conversations around the dining room table or around the TV, and it has to include everybody. So to me, it's a non-negotiable that I don't know who somebody is at my station for 24 hours. And, there were times that I felt excluded, that I felt nobody talked to me. And, that was one thing that I knew as a captain. That's never going to happen.
I love that. Well, that fits right in with some of the stuff that you've talked about, being a mentor. And I know that that's something that you've done a lot of. You've given back to a lot of people over the course of your years on this job. And, I know you the couple of things you do that really impressed me. Not only do you do the Valley Women stuff and work with other would-be firefighters, but you do the Franklin High School stuff, and you coach a high school mountain bike team. And I just really appreciate that you're putting yourself out there and showing other young women, young people in general. Like, I'm sure all these different people. What a powerful example to set for them.
Well, thank you. We enjoyed very much starting the Valley Women's Firefighter Society. We all came from different mentorship groups, and Bomberos was it for me. And there's all these different affinity groups that do a wonderful job of mentoring. But right around the same time that Chief Cockbrenner became chief, it seemed like a great opportunity to start a women's group again. And, from Donna Feller's group to Rosies Ladders, and now to actually have an affinity group that had the same status as all the rest of the 501c3 affinity groups out there, in which we could raise money and have our scholarship just like all the other ones, and mentor women in what women need mentoring, more mentorship in, which is, it's not necessarily how to talk to people, but more how to swing a sledgehammer, how to swing an axe, and things that women don't would not like normally in their lives get a chance to do, like most boys probably would if they hung out with their uncles and dads that did that kind of work. So it was an opportunity to do that, and I have stepped out of doing a lot of that work for a little while there. I had a CrossFit gym, and so what we did for the women's group was we invited them one night a week to do their workouts at our gym and do CrossFit type workouts. I no longer have that gym. That kind of went away with COVID, and it was a blessing in disguise in many ways. But we've continued with Franklin Mentorship, mentoring the kids there. And we started a high school mountain biking program there at Franklin, since most of those kids normally have to go to their home school to be able to participate in sports. This was the first sport that Franklin High School had to offer their kids. And
that's awesome.
And we love it. We have a great time, and it's a very competitive league, but we are a very non-competitive team. So we have kids that are competitive, but we're open to all the kids that want to ride, and most of them, they're just learning how to ride a bike. So to us, that's a win, to get a kid on a bike is a win.
So for those who are unacquainted, Franklin's a pretty urban school.
Correct.
So getting kids on mountain bikes is, he said it might be their first time ever on a mountain bike. Yeah. So the idea of going and racing cross country is a pretty big step.
Exactly.
That's a bold move.
And a lot of them would love to do that, but we got to take baby steps, right? And we got to get on a bike and learn how to brake first.
Right. Well, that's one of the cool things about the High School Cycling Association is just that. It's getting kids on bikes, which one of my favorite things in the world is riding my mountain bike.
Right.
Because it's just there's nothing better than just going through a corner and pinning it. Just what a cool feeling. And and frankly, you can go anywhere.
Right.
Right. You can go ride that thing. When I was a kid, one of my pathways to freedom was a bicycle.
Right.
Like I went to all these cool places as a kid because I would hop on my bike and go cruise.
Right. And it was a different world back then too. Kids, people were looking out for you on a bike.
But my point is that just that it unlocks a whole other world.
For sure.
Yeah.
It does. I think for our kids, there's that freedom of being on a bike, and also the freedom of seeing trails. A lot of kids have never seen these trails.
A little bit of wilderness action
in the middle of the city. We have a trail. We have a system of trails that's unbeatable for being 10 15 minutes away from any high school here practically. So mountain biking is a great sport to get kids out to see what nature is all about,
right? Even
in the middle of the city.
Well, and I think that I'll add, when you are living in the urban core, there's a lot of stress, and being able to go out and ride a mountain bike and do an activity that just takes you away from all that, something to be said for that.
For sure.
I like that.
But their excitement just to see a bunny or to see quail, they're like, oh my God, wildlife. Or a rattlesnake. Like, what is that? You know, like, don't get close, get out of there. But it's so fun to, take them out and hey, this is what you're learning in math right now. This is why this might seem so hard, but it isn't. This is what we're talking about when we're trying to figure out how fast you're going. And
here's math applied.
Yeah, and so just to get an opportunity to kind of see how the world fits into what they are trying to learn, which, sometimes it's so, out there. Like, this doesn't make sense. I'm never going to use it. Well, you are using it. We're using it right now. So
right. You didn't even realize.
Make that connection,
I love that.
It's so much fun.
So let's say you're, 18-year-old Ardell walks in and you're mentoring. What do you tell her?
Whatever anybody says you can't do is because they think that if they were you, they wouldn't be able to do it. But it has nothing to do with who you are. And it has nothing to do with what you know you've done up to this point, and don't let anybody else's lack of confidence in you give you any ideas of what you can do or you can't do, because it doesn't apply. That person has not had the same experiences as you. And little Ardell, as an 18-year-old, you've been kicking ass all your life. Don't listen to any of that, you know? So that would be my, that is what in my mind, what I want to tell everybody that walks through my doors, that wants to do anything in life and, feels like they can't for whatever reason. Like, well, we have a lot of limiting beliefs. We have a lot of things that we've grown with and that tell us you can't do this, you can't do that. And I think is in the beauty of letting go of those things and trying, at least trying, giving it a shot, but not saying, oh, I just can't do that, and never trying it. That's where the failure starts, and we need to end that type of thinking. We need to get out there and try it out, have fun. If you fail, great, at least you tried it. And maybe now you have a better idea how to do it better next time. Why not? Go for it. So there's nothing to lose, unless it's dangerous, right? But I mean, the normal day stuff that people say, I can't speak in front of people. Yes, you can. You're speaking in front of me right now. And what's the difference? One person or 100? You're still speaking to one person. You're talking to me in the audience. Don't say you can't do it. Go out there and try. What's the worst thing you can happen? You'll sweat yourself away. It won't happen. Trust me.
Right.
Like, you're going to be just fine. And you're going to make mistakes, and people are going to laugh, and people are going to feel like that was a complete waste of time. That's fine. Whatever they feel, they feel. But you went out there, you did it, you gave it your best. Keep trying. You never know.
I love that. All right, 18-year-old Dell's inspired. I love it. So outside of mentoring, rock climbing, riding bikes, all this cool stuff that you do, what is, I know that you're getting ready to wrap up your career here, and so I want to know, because you and I have talked about all kinds of funny, like, wild ideas and things and businesses and this and that and adventures. And so what is it that it inspires you in your life? What lights a fire in your belly? And it's like,
to me, is learning. There is so much out there to be learned, and I feel that I don't know that I've truly met my true potential. What is my ultimate in life? Like, I've done 20 years of great work here for Phoenix Fire, and I love this organization, and it's given me personally so much, but it's also given me this thing of there's so much more out there. Look at all the cool things that we get to experience every day. And I remember when I was a kid, the first time my uncle took me rappelling, and I think I was 7 or 8, and used the same racks that we used when we first got into TRT here in with Phoenix. And now our technology has improved tremendously, but I'm like, wow, like, that opened my eyes to a new world when I was a kid. That was exactly what I wanted to do when I got here. When I learned that Phoenix had technical rescue, they did mountain rescues and the equipment, and I was like, that's what I want to do. And 10 years into this job, I finally got the opportunity to be part of the technical rescue team and do all these things. And there are these 5 million other things out there in the world. Have I explored them all? Have I figured out what is out there that will really light a fire that I don't know that exists? And I'm in this, like, I need to find that thing. I need to find what that is. So I'm so interested in so many things, and I read about everything. And lately, between chess and even the way we play pitch, I'm interested in the way people play games, not just the game itself, but how do different people play the game. Poker, I'm not a gambler at all, but it just intrigues me, to learn about that whole world. People totally give their lives to a game, right? The video game frenzy that's going on in our world right now, sports, all of these sciences. I mean, we're looking at rockets that we are landing again. That was unheard of, right? Now we land rockets standing up again, ready for the next use, for the next time. It's it's a world full of amazing, just incredible novelty and imagination and creativity. And I feel like I need to dedicate the next 20 years of my life at exploring a whole lot more of that, with this knowledge that I have of what being a firefighter and being a captain and being a paramedic, and with this knowledge, understanding all this other stuff that's ahead of me. I think that's the coolest thing. And, I tell everybody I don't have a plan. And in a way I don't, right? It's the unplanned plan, right? But the plan is to learn and to figure it out and to give myself time, because all my life I've gone from one thing to the next. Like there's always been. So to go, what is the one thing people always tell you to do? Well, before you leave this job, you need to have another one lined up. Well, the only problem with that is that you don't really get to know exactly what it is that you want to do, other than you pretty much get the same job that you had before because it's what you know to do, right? So I really want to give myself space, maybe 5 months to a year, to figure out, hey, what do I want to try out? What's all this?
Yeah, it's time for you to take a gap year.
A gap year. What is that? A gap year.
I heard somebody the other day refer to taking a midlife gap year. And I was like, what? You can do that?
Right.
What the hell? What an amazing idea.
A paradigm shift, right?
Dude. So this lady, I don't know how old she was or whatever, but she looked to be in her 50s, and she's taking a midlife. I don't know if she took a sabbatical from work or what she was doing, if she retired or whatever. I didn't get into the whole story, but she just talked about taking a midlife gap year. And I thought, we need to explore who we are. And sometimes that comes at some people do that after high school, some people do it after college, right. But having an opportunity to spend some time with yourself and explore. And I love, that's the one thing I think I've come to understand, is that the more I learn, the more I understand that I know so little.
Right.
And so that's fascinating. And I love that that's what has got you fired up and inspired, because man, there's so much to know and to learn. And there's a lot out there.
Yeah. And I won't lie. The lack of sleep is a big motivator too.
Yeah. Take a nice long nap.
Yeah. I just need a nice long one that I can wake up from again. But yeah, I'm excited for all the crazy stuff in the world and getting out there and exploring it a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Before I let you go, before I let you retire, I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions. What's something you believe that other people think is crazy?
Retiring. I think people think it's crazy, especially I'm leaving drop, on the table.
Yeah.
And I think it's not crazy. It's what I need in my life right now. And but yeah, it is overwhelmingly, something that people look at me and they're like, you're completely nuts. And I get it. I get where they're coming from, but I also know where I come from once again. And my experience tell me, you've been without appropriate sleep for over 30 years, 20 years on this job, but another 10 years of that. It's time to give that heart a break and give it enough sleep and be smart about it. And I'm okay putting a price tag on it and a skull drop,
All right. Perfect. What's a bad piece of advice you've heard people give?
Oh man, bad piece of advice. Well, save money versus invest money. I think especially right now, that you can see how inflation works, and everybody still looks at it as everything is so expensive, but it's really the power of our dollar not meeting the expectations of the rest of the world, right? So our dollar is not, we can't achieve what we used to with the same dollar that we have. So if you keep saving your money, it's going to lose value. But if you invest it, even though things seem so harsh right now, with the market dropping the way it is, and this bear market, the way we're experiencing it, this is full of opportunity right now to invest. And so to everybody that's out there, this is not the time to save your money. This is the time to invest your money, to really go and find some ETFs, find some stocks that you feel comfortable with. If you're excited for the future of America, then invest in America. Invest in those companies that you think are going to do great 15, 20 years from now. And it's the reason why I can actually retire today and say, hey, I'm not going to take care of this. And I feel like all my life, I had great advice as far as putting money away. But the greatest advice that I got was, don't just put it away. Make sure you invest it.
Well, you just answered my third question, which was, what's a great piece of advice you've been given? You just gave it to me. All right, final question. Final question. What does it mean to be fireground fit?
Oh, okay. So putting a smile on your face for your customer, no matter what time it is, no matter if you're exhausted, no matter if you're done in so many ways, they don't need to see that you've been up all night. They don't need to see that you're angry with whatever is going on in your world. Fireground fit means that you signed up for this job, to do this job, and to put that smile for everybody. And that is for your customer at their house, at the bus stop, at the back of the Circle K, to the alarm room in the middle of the night when you're not really agreeing with why this is what it is, but it is what it is. So we're going to go and we're going to do it. And you can have a conversation, but you don't have to be angry and upset about it. You can make a phone call and be like, hey, I don't think this is something, or we've been here, 20 times today already. Or you can have the conversation, but there's no need to be angry and upset. And I think Fireground Fit is also showing your crew that you're willing to do the job and that you're putting a good face, because they will do exactly that too. Like if you're willing to work, they're going to work their asses off for you. If you're willing to put on a smile, they're going to do their best to do their best job at taking vitals and taking care of somebody, before, during, and after we take them to the hospital. And there's always the conversation in the truck before and after, and that's fine. But Fireground Fit, to me, if we're truly talking about, what this fireground is, the fire is no longer in the fires. The fires are at 3:00 in the morning on that highly anxious person that there's nothing wrong, but you have to sit there and you have to talk and you have to smile and you're going to have to reassure them. It's going to be okay. You got this. There's a lot of life happening here, and we can give you some resources. We're going to help you out. And it sounds way too positive, and I can already hear people going, you're full of shit. There's no way you can do that. Well, you can. You can totally, make sure that you're professional on your calls, and on the way back go, oh my gosh, I can't believe we just went on that. And it's okay, like we need to have each other's backs, but the customer doesn't need to see that. The alarm room doesn't need to see that. Nobody else needs to see that but ourselves. So.
Well, Captain Ardell Deliz, I'm super glad that we had an opportunity to sit down and talk. I love and appreciate you, and am grateful to have had an opportunity to spend 20 years working alongside you.
Same here. It's been a blast.
And we're going to miss you. And thanks again for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Very excited.
Hey folks, that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, listening to the Fireground Fitness Podcast. If you are enjoying this podcast, get on over to your favorite platform and subscribe. That way when this podcast drops, it will fall into your podcast app when you least expect it and be ready and available for you to listen to. Also, if you're enjoying it, get on over to Apple Podcasts, rate and review the podcast. We need that feedback. It helps grow the platform and get it out to other listeners. In the meantime, take the lessons you've heard here, things you've learned, and impart them into your life in some way that's meaningful. Go on out there and get some.